The impact of the COVID-19 crisis on the business outcomes and expectations of MSMEs in Metro Cebu. Chapter 1. The Problem, Rationale and Background.
The coronavirus disease 2019, also known as COVID-19, caused a massive disturbance to numerous lives in the local, national, and global scale. As it continues to proliferate, not only the physical health of individuals is being affected, but also the economic and financial well-being of businesses, most especially micro, small, and medium enterprises. Varied mobility restrictions imposed within communities in order to contain the spread of the virus have put a halt on the operations of most businesses. In this research, the researchers aim to identify and analyze the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the business outcomes and expectations of MSMEs, particularly in Metro Cebu. It specifically aims to assess MSMEs in terms of business requirements and legal issuances employed during the crisis, the pandemic's major effects in the financial performance, employment and labor force, marketing strategies, coping strategies, and the effectiveness of these strategies.
Statement of the problem. So the purpose of the study is to determine the impact of COVID-19 crisis on the business outcomes and expectations of MSMEs in Metro Cebu. So the sub-problems are, what is the profile of the MSMEs in Metro Cebu in terms of years of operation, number of employees, business type, location, startup capital, and amount of assets and liabilities? What is the level of perceived COVID-19 crisis among the MSMEs in Metro Cebu? What are the measures undertaken by the SMSEs to counter perceived COVID-19 crisis? What is the financial performance of the MSMEs in terms of sales expenses, net income? What are the expectations of the MSMEs in terms of the future of the business in Metro Cebu? Does the COVID-19 crisis affect the business performance and expectations of the MSMEs in Metro Cebu? And lastly, is there a significant difference in the identified variables when the MSMEs are grouped according to their profile, perceived COVID-19 crisis, business performance, business expectations?
The following statements are the identified assumptions of the study. The study is conducted among the MSMEs in Metro Cebu. Google Forms are distributed through emails to gather data. The participants of the study remain objective and provide truthful and honest information. The confidentiality and anonymity of the respondents are protected. Any information disseminated without the consent of any parties involved in the study might undergo investigation, and all information gathered is restricted only to the use of this study.
The null hypothesis of the study are, number 1, the perceived COVID-19 crisis among the MSMEs does not affect the business performance. Number 2, the perceived COVID-19 crisis among MSMEs does not affect the business expectations. And number 3, there's no significant difference in the perceived COVID-19 crisis, business performance, and business expectations among the MSMEs when they are grouped according to their profile.
Significance of the study. The findings of this study will benefit, first, business. This research can serve as a guidance in the improvement and betterment of the business operations that would best respond to the status quo. Second, economy. This research can give ideas to businesses on ways to cope up with the current situation, thus giving a positive impact to the economy. Third, government. The government can get information about the businesses' implementation with the COVID-19 health protocols. This can help them in the continuance of modifying, reducing, and enhancing measures. Lastly would be the future researchers. This research can be a foundation for future studies that aim to know and learn more about the business outcomes and expectations of MSMEs.
Scope and limitations of the study. This study focuses on COVID-19 crisis impact on the business outcomes and expectations of MSMEs in Metro Cebu. The target population of the study or the subject are the MSMEs in Metro Cebu. The data are collected through online survey questionnaires. A 10-month period is allotted to accomplish the study. Due to the online setup, the data gathering is exclusively done through online platforms, which may create limitations in the variability of the participants. As government protocols are implemented, any activities involving preliminary data collections, summarization, and analysis are to be done online.
The key terms defined are business outcomes, which are the immediate effects of the COVID-19 crisis on the financial performance, employment, and marketing strategies of MSMEs. Second is business expectations, which are the long-term effects of the COVID-19 crisis on the ongoing operations of MSMEs. Third is the COVID-19 crisis, which is a pandemic caused by the SARS-CoV-2 strain that has led to economic and social disruptions as a result of government-mandated protocols to contain and eradicate the virus. And lastly is MSMEs, which are micro, small, and medium enterprises having less than 200 employees and assets below 100 million pesos, comprising the majority of businesses in existence in the Philippines.
Now, I will relate to you the organization of the study. This research proposal has 3 chapters for the fulfillment of its objective, which is to determine the impact of COVID-19 crisis and business outcomes and expectations of MSMEs in Metro Cebu. Chapter 1 contains the rationale, the statement of the problem, the assumptions, the hypotheses, the significance of the study, and its scope and limitations. It also defined the terms employed by the researchers for the readers to comprehend and understand the study thoroughly. This is the part where the researchers identify the nature of such study, the purpose of such undertaking, and its relevance to what is currently happening in the society. Chapter 2 encompasses the theoretical background, which provides a comprehensive summary of previous researches used to support the chosen study. Chapter 3 is the research methodology, which shows how the research was conducted. The researchers used survey questionnaires to obtain information, and the data gathered will be analyzed using different statistical methods. It fundamentally covers all the statistically relevant information about the study.
Chapter 2. Theoretical background.
Related legal basis. Businesses, in order to operate legally, have to comply and consider the regulations imposed by the government. COVID-19 is a game changer for both businesses and government, disrupting the normal setup of transactions. In the United States, one of its goals in response to COVID-19 is to mitigate spread through clear public health standards. Executive order establishing the National Pandemic Testing Board and ensuring a sustainable public health workforce was issued to oversee the widespread testing for the businesses to safely reopen. In the Philippine setting, DTI has been updating the COVID-19 resources for the business. They must comply with the necessary company policies for the prevention and control of COVID-19. Employers remind their employees to observe daily health practices and obey the minimum safety measures in their work to avoid spreading the virus.
The COVID-19 pandemic resulted in an unprecedented shock to the financial performance of firms. Globally, according to a survey by the World Bank Group, a drop of 27% on the sales of more than 120,000 firms in more than 60 countries was experienced from October 2020 to January 2021, with smaller firms being the worst affected. Due to quarantine measures, lockdowns, and fear, there has been a huge shift in the demand of certain goods and services, which led to an immense drop on sales. This in turn affected firms' probability of being open amid the pandemic, as operating expenses still needs to be paid while the sales and cash flow to meet these obligations have dwindled. In the Philippines, according to Asian Development Bank, an average of 47% MSMEs had no sales in March 2020 due to temporary closures, with micro enterprises being severely affected. On the other hand, an average of 37% MSMEs experienced a sales decrease of over 30% from February to March. Moreover, some MSMEs had an increase in sales due to the demands on special commodities during the lockdown. As the researchers navigate through major countries such as the United States and China, studies show that some of the biggest companies in the US, namely Whiting Petroleum, Diamond Offshore, and J.Crew, have filed for bankruptcy in late April and May 2020. In addition, the travel industry in the US is greatly affected, as evidenced by low occupancy rates resulting to low or no profits at all. China, one of the biggest exporters of goods, experienced a 6.8% fall in their GDP in the first quarter of 2020 due to movement restrictions. Lastly, in ASEAN countries, The negative supply, negative demand, and positive demand shocks have affected business operations, resulting to a negative 3.3% growth rate during the COVID crisis. This is the lowest since the Asian financial crisis of 1997 to 1998.
The start of the worldwide pandemic created a number of initial claims for unemployment since the first months of 2020, with over 16.5 million by April 2020, with an average rate of 67 million unemployed per week, as reported by Bureau of Labor Statistics. Workers whose jobs could be performed remotely from home, such as customer support and teachers, are able to continue from their home office. Other white-collar jobs, such as those who provide essential services like cashiers, healthcare professionals, have no other choice but to continue their usual routines. The imposed hard lockdown last March to May 2020 peaked at the highest unemployment rate and the hardest downfall in the Philippine gross domestic product in history. MSMEs contribute a significant portion of the employment of different countries such as the Philippines, as reported by DTI. The reports issued by the Philippine Labor Force Survey in April 2020, from 5.1% unemployment rate in April 2019, the April 2020 unemployment rate skyrocketed to 17.7% unemployment rate, which affected 7.25 million workers in different sectors. According to the International Trade Center, MSMEs are vastly considered as the backbone and economic lifeblood of the Philippines. MSMEs create job opportunities for the country's growing labor force and contribute significantly to the Philippine gross domestic product, accounting for about 40% of the total GDP. As reported in the Department of Trade and Industry, the MSMEs were able to generate approximately 5.5 million jobs. Microenterprises accounted for the highest share of total employment generated by MSMEs, which is 29.8%, equivalent to 2.6 million jobs in 2019. Small enterprises created 2.2 million jobs, accounting for 25.2%, while medium enterprises contributed 7.4% to the country's total employment. In regional breakdown of these values, Central Visayas accounts only for 7%. Generally, in most MSMEs, the employment rate has little to no changes during the first months of 2020, which was before the lockdown, but various MSMEs began laying off employees at a relatively early stage of pandemic to survive, especially in manufacturing and services.
Now we go to the marketing strategies. According to a study by the Asian Development Bank, most MSMEs in the Philippines immediately lacked the funds necessary to maintain their businesses after the lockdown. A study by Shiena Mae and Earl revealed that only 14.8% of micro, 19% of small, and 28.7% of medium-sized enterprises in the Philippines had enough cash and savings to keep their businesses going for a month. Based on capital, consumers and businesses alike have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. With this major shift and the emergence of a new normal, a new way to market to customers has emerged. Moreover, Hoxha and Lee Flang said that the use of marketing during and after the COVID-19 crisis resembles and will continue to resemble how marketing is conducted during economic downturns. Kenichi stated that for years, experts have predicted the shift to digital marketing. The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated that change in ways that marketers could not have predicted. Based on the research by Oracle, the expectation is that at least a part of the shift to online shopping will be permanent. In the past 12 months, 4 out of 5 or 80% of global consumers spent more than an hour per week shopping online. Moorman et al. Revealed that marketers have used social media for brand building and customer retention during the pandemic. Small companies are taking advantages of selling online, with e-commerce accounting for 26.1% of sales. According to Lugdu, consumer e-commerce spending in the Philippines appears to have shifted as a result of the pandemic, with a projected increase of 42.5% to $3.55 billion by 2020. Since MSMEs are part of the digital economic ecosystem, transformation and innovation in digital skills is needed for business sustainability. Consequently, MSMEs need to adapt to changes in the current situation for them to thrive in the competitive market.
Let us proceed to the measures taken by MSMEs against the perceived COVID-19 crisis. According to Sharma and PNE 2020, The worst aftermath of the COVID-19 crisis that confronted MSMEs is business interruption, and usually businesses utilize their savings to survive this period. In a study by Hurans, Hockey and Face, 56% of the SMEs reduced their expenses by suspending or reducing payments and temporarily or permanently laying off employees. However, small and micro businesses are usually unable to lay off staff as they do not really have that many employees. There are other adaptive recovery strategies such as the conduct of operations through online platforms, offering of non-cash payment options, introduction of new products, and establishment of work-from-home setups. Unfortunately, the United Nations Development Program added that these were not enough. In fact, Hurans, Hockey and Face supplemented that the majority of the firms still need support such as financial grants and access to markets and other sales channels. However, a conclusion as to whether or not these measures are effective in the long run still need further studies, according to Adam and Elarifi in 2021. On the positive side, they pointed out that the ability to innovate has a direct effect on the MSME's ability to survive. The International Trade Center supports that this is because innovative firms are prepared with the tools, skills, the ingenuity, and the funds in order to keep up with the changes. Companies that have prepared a comprehensive contingency plan transition their sales mix towards digital sales channels and purchase from more appropriate suppliers, and even learn how to do business online. Those that dedicated resources to research and development before COVID-19 were more likely to employ agile and resilient strategies because they're more confident in their methods. Firms that use retreating techniques believe that their businesses will eventually crumble, so they sold off their assets, which significantly harm the company because they're basically curtailing their ability to compete.
Justification of the proposed study. In this purpose of the study is to explore the main impact of the COVID-19 crisis on the small businesses in the Metro Cebu. The current COVID-19 crisis is causing loss of life, human suffering, and had several economic crises across from the globe. It is not look like any country will be unaffected. Even we cannot prevent dangerous viruses from emerging, we should prepare to dampen their effect on our society. As we are in the middle of COVID-19 pandemic, it is very difficult to estimate the long-term effects. The store factories and many businesses have been closed by government policy mandates. Although the effect of COVID-19 on the economic show up quickly in the stock market, financial performance, market strategy, and employment claims, the effect on the small business are not well known because of the lack of timely business level data released by the government. In this situation of global effort is to address some of the pandemic-related issues affected in our society. For a period after a pandemic, we tend to become less interested in investing and more interested in saving in our capital, resulting in reduced economic income. So moving on our research of the study, the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on the business outcome and expectation of MSME in the Metro Cebu. We came up with a theoretical framework using the Gonzalez, Herrero, and Pratt crisis management theory and also the McKinsey-Sevens model. The Gonzalez, Herrero, and Pratt crisis management theory, which consists of three different stages, which are the diagnosis of crisis, planning and implementation, and adjusting to changes, are also relatable to the 7K internal elements of McKinsey's model, which are strategy, structure, system, style, staff, skills, and share value. So let's start with diagnosis of crisis. In this stage is involved, as you will see, the indicator of crisis affected in the small businesses. The owners and manager should recognize the signs of crisis. In this stage, two of McKinsey's 7th model key element, which is the strategy and style, should take place. Strategy is a plan used by the business organization in order to maintain a competitive industry or market in order to survive the COVID-19 crisis and keep their business operation. In this model, it is best approach to build a long-term strategy that fits with the company mission and value. Style is symbolized the company's technique and passion. So moving to the next stage of Gonzalez, Herrero, and Pratt crisis management theory is planning. The second stage of the crisis management theory is the continuous process of making decision, the best possible knowledge, organizing efforts, This planning stage requires strategy and style element from McKinsey's 7th model. In proper small businesses and MSME plannings and strategy from the top quality leaders and management. The final stage of the Gonzalez, Herrero, and Pratt crisis management theory is the implementation adjusting to swings, which is the implementation where the business owner of the macro, small, and medium enterprise shall plan or create a new changes. In this stage, we are going to apply the 4 elements of the McKinsey model, which is the structure that represent the way business division and units are organized and arranged with corresponding people managing specific areas. System, this is how the business procedure are operating daily tasks, workflows, and decision making on how the job is done. Staff is the element that focusing on the number of employees of the people, recruitment, development of employees, and allocated. Skills, it is employees, talents, and capability of the company will required in order to support the strategy or structure that emerges frequently. In the last of 7 McKinsey model element is share value. Are the company generally acknowledged standard and convention that impact and moderate the behavior of all employees and management. Share value are consist into the 2 ops element, which is the soft element and hard elements. Strategy, structure, and system are hard elements that are most easy to identify and manage when compared to soft elements. On the other hand, soft elements, although harder to manage, are the foundation of the organization, are more likely to create a sustained competitive advantage.
I will explain the conceptual framework of the study. We researchers came up with a conceptual framework that is designed to address the variables of the study and connect it to existing related studies. As shown in the diagram, the perceived COVID-19 crisis has an impact on the business outcomes and expectations of MSMEs, and in response, the MSMEs implemented coping strategies that would mitigate or even counter the expected adverse effect of such crisis. The financial performance of the business is one or even the most crucial determining factor in the continuation of operations. Businesses that suffered from continued losses and was unable to meet their current obligation due to the decrease in demand brought about by the economic downturn, where unemployment rose, the reduction of income, and the closures of schools and universities, and the staying at home is the new norm. The researchers will look into the repercussions of the COVID-19 crisis on MSMEs' employment and the coping strategies made by them. Considering business have switched to online transactions and work from home setting, still businesses have shut down as a result of increase in COVID-19 cases, which cause a widespread job loss. One of the effects of COVID-19 on business operations is the change in their marketing strategies. They began to research and test new online strategies for marketing their products and generating revenue in a more efficient manner in the new norm. The study will reveal various strategies used by them, which will then be analyzed to determine their efficacy.
Chapter 3. Research Methodology.
Moving on to the research methodology. First is the research design. We will use a descriptive survey to determine the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on the business outcomes and expectations of MSMEs in Metro Cebu. It is descriptive in the sense that the data obtained will be thoroughly analyzed and described. A survey in the form of standardized questions in a questionnaire will be established to collect data about the profile of the MSMEs, the level of perceived COVID-19 crisis, the measures undertaken to counter perceived COVID-19 crisis, the financial performance, the expectations in terms of the future of the business, and a significant difference in the identified variables when the MSMEs are grouped according to their profile. The setting of the study where the research respondents are located will be limited to locations within Cebu metropolitan area, or simply Metro Cebu. Metro Cebu is the main metropolitan hub of Cebu province, and it is composed of Carcar City, Cebu City, Compostela, Consolacion, Cordova, Danao City, Lapu-Lapu City, Liloan, Mandawi City, Minglanilla, Naga City, San Fernando, and Talisay City. The target population of the study are the micro, small, and medium enterprises in Metro Cebu. Collectively, MSMEs are those with employee size of less than 200 and with asset size of below 100 million.
The research instrument utilized in this study to generate the needed quantitative data to answer the research problem is a researcher-developed questionnaire which consists of 6 parts. The first part gathers general information about the MSME's profile. The second part is designed to answer the perceived COVID-19 crisis of MSMEs in Metro Cebu. Part 3 will focus on the countermeasures undertaken by MSMEs to the perceived COVID-19 crisis. Part 4 will tackle on the financial performance. The fifth part will focus on the expectations of MSMEs in terms of the future of the business. And finally, the last part of the questionnaire is intended to determine the relationship between COVID-19 crisis and the business performance expectations. Now, the research instrument will be pilot tested to establish its reliability and validity. Additionally, the said questionnaire will be made available online through Google Forms.
Now moving to research procedures. First, the sample size for the study will be estimated using sample size to estimate the mean, using the formula n is equal to z squared sigma squared over e squared with a 95% confidence interval, 0.25 estimated population standard deviation, and a margin of error of 5%. We will arrive at a total of 97 respondents. However, the 97 respondents are only estimates and not yet final. The exact number will be determined after the conduct of the pre-testing. The respondents will be chosen through a probability sampling technique called simple random sampling. A list of MSMEs in Metro Cebu will be compiled, and respondents will be chosen at random from the list. The chosen respondents will then be asked to participate in the survey and answer questions about the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on their business outcomes and expectations.
Validate the research instrument, the first draft of the questionnaire will be submitted to the advisor of the researchers for further evaluation, corrections, and recommendations that can help improve and enhance the research instrument. Items that are found to be irrelevant to the desired outcome of the research study and confusing to future respondents will be discarded and removed. For further reliability, the research instrument will be pilot tested to establish its validity. The results of the Convac alpha coefficient will be reported after the conduct of pilot testing. In gathering the data, the researchers of this study utilizes a thoroughly designed survey questionnaire in gathering the necessary and needed information and data from the selected micro, small, and medium enterprises all throughout Metro Cebu. Due to some restrictions and constraints in relation to physical movements, the researchers will primarily conduct the survey online through Google Forms, which will be sent to the desired respondents through Facebook, Messenger, emails, and their websites, if any. For data processing method, raw data collected from the researcher-developed questionnaire will be examined thoroughly for duplications, miscalculations, and incompleteness. The data will then be summarized and arranged using Microsoft Excel, which will subsequently be used in the application of statistical tools including SPSS and other features of Microsoft Excel. Now, the outcome of the analysis of data will be used to create valid conclusions and will consequently be transcribed into tables, graphs, and charts to make it more comprehensible, accompanied by interpretations of the end result of the quantitative data. Statistical treatment, the data gathered and generated from the questionnaire will be exported to Microsoft Excel for data management and will subsequently be imported to IBM SPSS for final analysis. The profile of MSMEs of Metro Cebu and the measures undertaken by MSMEs to counter COVID-19 crisis will be obtained and measured using the percentage distribution. The level of perceived COVID-19 crisis among the respondents of the study, the financial performance of the MSMEs, and the expectations of MSMEs in relation to their future business will be gauged using the mean and standard deviation. The effect of COVID-19 crisis in terms of the business performance and expectations of MSMEs in Metro Cebu will be measured and quantified using the correlation and regression analysis. And finally, a t-test for independent samples and analysis of variance will be performed to determine if there is a significant difference in the identified variables when MSMEs are grouped according to their profiles. Now, all statistical calculations in this research study will be performed using IBM SPSS, and statistical significance will be evaluated at 0.05 level.